Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and a very warm welcome to this week's episode of Reflections, the show from Torch Trust that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm Marilyn Baker and I'll be with you for the next half hour. Today is Sight Loss Sunday, a day organised by Torch to celebrate the gifts of blind and partially sighted people and to wake the church up to sight loss. And we're joining with churches all over who are marking today by holding very special services. We've put together a host of resources for the day and we're going to share one of them with you now. This was originally created as a video to be shared at church, but here is an audio version which explores what Sight Loss Sunday is all about.
Matthew Horspool.
Sight Loss Sunday is Torch's opportunity to wake up the church to the issues faced by blind and partially sighted people and to give blind and partially sighted people the opportunity to demonstrate to their churches how they can be welcomed, how they can be included, how they can use their gifts in their churches, just as anybody else can.
Sheila Armstrong.
The aim of the church is to welcome everyone, and sight loss friendliness is one of the ways in which a church can do that. They may be faced with other disabilities, people coming in needing other things, but I certainly know that there is a need for churches to think about how they can be friendly and welcoming towards blind and partially sighted people.
Ifeolu Akintunde, Torch trustee.
Because I know many people who actually say to me, they're not even happy going to church. And when that happens, I just think that's really sad, because God wants us to fully participate in his body. God talks about one body, and the body has many parts, and each part has a function. And part of what I believe about the functioning of the body is that if a part of the body is not performing the function, then the body is disabled. Isn't that what we say? So I think that there are a lot of disabled churches in many senses, because the body of Christ, as represented in that church, has some members that are not fully playing their parts.
Chich Hewitt, retired priest.
I had normal vision up until the age of 63. With regard to sight loss, I would like churches to become more involved, and it's actually quite a challenge to do that, because churches are so busy trying to look after themselves and their needs and their finances and everything else that goes on with the community, that people don't always see the need until they have to face it.
Stephanie Sargent.
I find that a Torch Trust for the Blind can provide very valuable services to churches who are interested in learning how to guide people, particularly who have recently lost their sight and don't always know exactly what to ask for. A Torch can enable churches to know how to befriend them in a positive way.
Jeanette Fowler.
My ideal experience of church, going in there for the first time, is having somebody on the door, not just somebody who, says hello and is barely looking, but somebody who actually talks to you and asks you your name.
I strongly believe that we are all made in God's image. I don't think it makes any difference.
We all need to find God's love and redemption to be made perfect in his image.
I've found throughout my life that God has enabled me, through my blindness, to empathise with people and identify them in whatever suffering they're going through.
As humans, we need to understand a few things about who we are. And one of my favorite passages in the Bible for this is Psalm 139. And part of that says, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. If I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, then for me, it really doesn't matter whether I'm blind or not, whether I'm anything, but I start from the notion that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
I believe that I am made in God's image. I don't believe that blindness was ever God's plan. He still loves us the same, and I do believe that God does heal. Sometimes we get healed and sometimes we don't, and we don't always understand why, when things don't happen the way we want. But I still believe, yes, I am blind and that is reality, but I am still made in God's image.
Sight Loss Sunday happens once a year, but we don't want people with sight loss to only be included once a year, to only be welcomed once a year. This is something that needs to be happening every time a person with sight loss goes into church. On a Sunday, every Sunday, at home groups, at midweek services, every time there's something happening in the church, we want blind and partially sighted people to be included, to be welcomed, to be part of that, to be valued. And we achieve this through our Sight Loss Friendly Church initiative. And if you'd like more information about that, you can go to torchtrust.org and follow the links there to Sight Loss Friendly Church.
Well, we're all for celebrating the marvellous giftings of blind and partially sighted people. And now I'd like to celebrate the gifts of one person in particular, our dear friend Sheila Armstrong. As regular listeners will know, Sheila is part of the Reflections team, but this is far from her only set of skills. I'm going to share a lovely thought for the week with you now, written by Sheila.
I wonder if, like me, you sometimes find that certain words gradually dawn on you. You've been vaguely aware of them, but suddenly they seem to demand your attention and you have to find out exactly what they mean. One such word for me was postmodern. Surely, I reasoned, it's either modern or it's out of date. How can anything be postmodern? I came to understand that modern was being used to describe the so-called scientific, logical, completely reason-driven view, which was believed to have replaced the woolly ignorance and unquestioning acceptance that preceded it. But various factors, not least our vastly increased knowledge of the world through the news, on the radio or the television or the internet, have seriously shaken people's belief in the idea that rational thinking would gradually improve us. We can't ignore the many examples of completely irrational behaviour. For instance, what drives people to believe it's okay to construct and even use chemical weapons against their fellow human beings? Or how could the exploitation of vulnerable children ever be reasonable? Many people are feeling the need for something more. So if it's not ancient and it's not modern, then I guess it must be postmodern. Most people have no idea that they could be described as postmodernists. It's just a label used to denote the drift away from so-called rational thinking. For example, these days people are far less likely to discount the spiritual dimension of life. They don't believe that everything can be reduced to a reasonable and clear-cut answer. If it's right for you, they say, then it's okay, even if it's not right for me. It's easy to see how taking this view could quickly result in chaos and confusion. But it can also lead to a new openness to consider the idea that maybe God could exist after all. What do you think? Perhaps you wouldn't describe yourself as a Christian, but you do feel that important questions can't easily be explained purely by rational answers. There's a very interesting verse in the Bible which certainly throws light on it. The foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men.
And that comes from the Apostle Paul in his first letter to the Corinthian church, chapter 1, verse 25. So what do you think?
Sight Loss Sunday is part of Torch's Sight Loss Friendly Church initiative, which aims to help churches across the land improve their welcome to blind and partially sighted people. Let's hear from a few people whose churches have already signed up.
I just love the support that comes out of Torch Trust. It's been the Sight Loss Friendly Church initiative. It's accessible. It's easy to get on the bottom rung of the ladder and work your way up. It doesn't feel like it's a jump too far. So we are a sight loss friendly church, St Nicholas of Early, which is the church I'm part of. And yes, we still do things wrong, but our heart's in the right place and we're trying.
As a member of the church council, I kept asking the question, is this accessible? Is this accessible? It suddenly started making them realise that actually I wasn't the only person in the congregation who would be struggling with being able to see things on data projectors, news sheets and that sort of information. And so they have turned their whole perspective around to make it a lot more friendly, and having members of the staff, whether it's the welcoming team or the people who do the drinks after the service, being aware of visually impaired people and how best to accommodate them and facilitate them as part of the family of the church.
I went to the Sunday school in my local church in Potton, which was where my family attended, and that church were absolutely fantastic. They were really inclusive and still are, and the pastor's wife at the time, she learnt Braille along with my parents so that she could braille out hymns or Sunday school lessons for me. Yeah, it was really good.
What a commitment.
I know, it was brilliant. So I was, always really involved in church.
Gosh,
and
church leaders, take note of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was brilliant. It was really good. And people would, like the teachers of the Sunday school, they would make things. For example, we did once the story of the woman washing Jesus's feet with her tears and pouring oil on them. And I had a pair of cardboard feet and a bottle of perfume, and it was just accessible, really, really nice. So I've always been really involved in church. I'm fairly musical and I do a bit of singing, so I was singing in church and things. So I'd come to know God at an early age, and I was baptised at 12. And my church had actually just changed their hymn books, and they had swapped the hymn books to praise and Christian hymns, and Christian hymns wasn't available in Braille. So they sort of said to Torch Trust, how much would it cost to transcribe? And I think the cost was about £1,000, and the church funded that.
I just think it's really important to get involved and find things out, because there are folk out there who don't see as well as maybe some of us do, or as well as they did. And sometimes people don't like to admit it, don't like to talk to us. Actually, having this and saying we're a sight loss friendly church, encourage people to share if they've got issues, so maybe we can help. And we got access. We don't have to just think it all up on our own and try and reinvent the wheel for ourselves. We've got people there who know and have experience, and let's share that experience rather than sort of ploughing our own furrow or paddling our own canoe and doing some things well but some things not so well. Seeing how connecting with Torch and the Torch group in Milton Keynes, what that meant to one person in our church, it's been massive for them. And we just want to say to people that it's out there. There is expertise out there, so get in touch with Torch because they're really good. Go for it, do it.
Well, I'm sorry to say that we're all out of time for this week. I do hope you've enjoyed celebrating Sight Loss Sunday with us, and if you attend a church which isn't marking the day, why not suggest that they hold a Sight Loss Sunday celebration on a different date? To access our fantastic resources, including the video versions of the 2 pieces you heard today, all churches have to do is visit torchtrust.org, click on Churches, and then click on Sight Loss Sunday in the drop-down menu. This can be done at any time, and Sight Loss Sunday can be marked whenever suits you. Find out more at torchtrust.org/SL If your church would like to dig deeper into accessibility for blind and partially sighted people, why not explore our Sight Loss Friendly Church programme? This is also completely free, and once you've signed up, your church will have access to a wealth of resources, tips, and even training. To learn more, please visit torchtrust.org/SLFC or give us a call on 01858 438 260. You can also email info@torchtrust.org. So till next week, from me, Marilyn, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.